Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. This is a recitation of Tobariko Kadao. That is Torah, Bhagavad Gita, Digha Nikaya, Dhammapada, Gospels, Quran, and Tao Te Ching. This week is portion numero 48, which is Shotim. That includes from Torah, Parsha Shotim, which is Devarim 16:18 a 21:9. From the Kata Upanishad, it is chapter 2. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is the Bhakti Yoga numero 12. From Tao Te Ching, it is chapter 68 and chapter 69. From Menke, it is chapter 28, which concludes the readings of within Menke. Within the Digha Nikaya, it is the Atanatiya Sutta 32. From the Dhammapada, it is the Panika Vaga numero 21. From Gospels, it is Acts, chapters 10 a 12. From the Quran, it is Surah Al-Mursalat, Surah An-Naba, Surah An-Naziyat, which are Surahs 77 a 79. And from Tanakh, it is Yehoshua, chapters 7 a 9. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah Akbar. Tao ke tao fe chung tao, min ke min fe chung min. Ja Rastafari. Deus noster qui es in cieli, sanctificato nomen tuum. Vaheguru Sanam. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kasanu b'mitotav v'tzivanu l'suk b'revai Torah. Amen. Baruch ata Elohim, Eloheinu melech haolam, barei b'riah gafen. Amen. Kyrie eleison. Siva mastu save jagatahim, sabe sata bhavantu sukhitata. Fagabiyam. Aquaba upendo na amanim, fikiri nesalamin, cinta dan paramin, liabavimim, womanjagam. Ubuntu shabono fakithkam. Shishem, como sanira, domo arigato, pilama yelo wakantok, tok odokashin good, governagan, God, we thank you for all that you bless us. Ata jam yat yata afanami. Bado, Aho, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Torah Shoftim Devarim 16:18 a 21:9. You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourself in all your cities that Elohim your God is giving you for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words. Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and possess the land Elohim your God is giving you. You shall not plant for yourself an Asherah or any tree near the altar of Elohim your God, which you shall make for yourself. And you shall not set up for yourself a monument which Elohim your God hates. You shall not sacrifice to Elohim your God an ox or a sheep that has in it a blemish or any bad thing, for that is an abomination to Elohim your God. If there will be found amongst you within one of your cities which Elohim your God is giving you, a man or a woman who does evil in the eyes of Elohim your God, to transgress Elohim's covenant, and who will go and worship other deities and prostrate himself before them, or to the soleil, the moon, or any of the hosts of the heavens, which I have not commanded, and it will be told to you, and you will hear it and investigate thoroughly, and behold, the matter coincides. This abomination has been perpetuated in Israel. Then you shall bring out that man or that woman who has committed this evil thing to your cities, the man or the woman, and you shall pelt them with stones, and they shall die. By the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall the one be liable to death be put to death. He shall not be put to death by the mouth of 1 witness. The hand of the witnesses shall be first upon him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people, and you shall abolish evil from amongst you. If a matter eludes you in judgment, between blood and blood, between judgment and judgment, or between legion and legion, words of dispute in your cities, then you shall rise and go up to the place Elohim your God chooses. And you shall come to the Levitic Kohanim and to the judge who will be in those days, and you shall inquire, and they will tell you the words of judgment. And you shall do according to the word they tell you from the place Elohim will choose, and you shall observe to do according to all they instruct you. According to the law they instruct you, and according to the judgment they say to you, you shall do. You shall not divert from the word they tell you, either right or left. And the man who acts intentionally, not obeying the Kohen who stands there to serve Elohim your God, or to the judge, that man shall die, and you shall abolish evil from Israel. And all the people shall listen in fear, and they shall no longer act wantonly. When you come to the land Elohim your God is giving you, and you possess it, and live therein, and you say, I will set a king over myself like all the nations around me, you shall set a king over you, one whom Elohim your God chooses. From amongst your brothers you shall set a king over yourself. You shall not appoint a foreigner over yourself, one who is not your brother. Only he may not acquire many horses for himself, so that he will not bring the people back to Egypt in order to acquire many horses. For Elohim said to you, you shall not return that way any further. And he shall not take many wives for himself, and his heart must not turn away, and he shall not acquire much silver and gold for himself. And it will be, when he sits upon his royal throne, that he shall write for himself two copies of this Torah on a scroll from that Torah which is before the Levitic Kohanim. And it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, so that he may learn to fear Elohim his God, to keep all the words of this Torah and these statutes, to perform them, so that his heart will not be haughty over his brothers, and so that he will not turn away from the commandment, either to the right or to the left, in order that he may prolong his days in his kingdom, he and his sons amongst Israel. The Levitic Kohanim, the entire tribe of Levi, shall have no portion or inheritance with Israel. The Lord's fire offerings and Elohim's inheritance they shall eat. But he shall have no inheritance amongst his brothers. Elohim is his inheritance, as Elohim has spoke to him. And this shall be the Kohanim's due from the people, from those who perform a slaughter, be it an ox or a sheep. He shall give the Kohen the foreleg, the jaws, and the maw. The first of your grain, your wine, and your oil, and the first of the fleece of your sheep you shall give him. For Elohim your God has chosen him out of all your tribes to stand and serve in the name of Elohim, he and his sons all the days. And if a Levite comes from one of your cities out of all Israel where he sojourns, he may come wherever his soul desires to the place Elohim will choose. And he may serve in the name of Elohim his God, just like all of his Levite brothers who stand there before Elohim. They shall eat equal portions, except what was sold by the forefathers. When you have come to the land Elohim your God is giving you, you shall not learn to do like the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found amongst you anyone who passes his son or daughter through fire, a soothsayer, a diviner of auspicious times, one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, a pithorn sorcerer, a yido sorcerer, or a necromancer. For whoever does these things is an abomination to Elohim, and because of these abominations, Elohim your God is driving them out from before you. Be wholehearted with Elohim your God. For these nations which you are to possess, hearken to diviners of auspicious times and soothsayers, but as for you, Elohim your God has not given you things like these. A prophet from amongst you, from your brothers like me, Elohim your God will set up for you. You shall hearken to him, according to all that you asked of Elohim your God in Horeb on the day of the assembly, saying, let me not continue to hear the voice of Elohim my God, and let me no longer see this great fire, so that I will not die. And Elohim said to me, they have done well in what they have spoken. I will set up a prophet for them from amongst their brothers like you, and I will put my words into his mouth, and he will speak to them all that I command him. And it will be that whoever does not hearken to my words that he speaks in my name, I will exact it of him. But the prophet who intentionally speaks a word in my name, which I did not command him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other deities, that prophet shall die. Now, if you say to yourself, how will we know the word that Elohim did not speak? If the prophet speaks in the name of Elohim, and the thing does not occur and does not come about, that is the thing Elohim did not speak, the prophet has spoken it wantonly, you shall not be afraid of him. When Elohim your God cuts off the nations whose land Elohim your God is giving you, and you inherit them and dwell in their cities and in their houses, you shall separate 3 cities for yourself in the midst of your land, which Elohim your God is giving you to possess. Prepare the road for yourself and divide it into 3 parts, the boundary of your land, which Elohim your God is giving you as an inheritance, and it will be for every killer to flee there. And this is the case of the killer who will flee there, so that he may live. Whoever strikes his fellow to death unintentionally, whom he did not hate in times past. As when a man goes with his fellow into the forest to chop wood, and his hand swings the axe to cut down the tree, and the iron flies off the handle, and it reaches his fellow, and he dies, he shall flee to one of these cities and live. Lest the avenger of the blood pursue the killer, whilst his heart is hot, and overtake him, because the way is long, and he strikes him to death, whereas he was not deserving of death, for he had not hated him in times past. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall separate for yourself 3 cities. And when Elohim your God expands your boundary, as Elohim swore to your forefathers, and Elohim gives you all the land of which Elohim spoke to give to your forefathers, if you will keep all this commandment to perform it, which I command you this day, to love Elohim your God, and to walk in Elohim's ways all the days, you shall add 3 further cities for yourself in addition to these 3, so that innocent blood will not be shed in the midst of your land, which Elohim your God gives you for an inheritance, which would deem you guilty of having shed this blood. But if a man hates his fellow, lies in wait for him, rises up against him, and strikes him fatally, and he flees to one of these cities, the elders of his city shall send and take him from there, and deliver him into the hand of the avenger of the blood, that he may die. And you shall not pity him, but you shall abolish the shedding of the blood of the innocent from Israel, and it will be beneficial for you. You shall not put back your neighbor's landmark, which the earlier ones have set as borders in your inheritance, which you will inherit in the land that Elohim your God gives you to possess. One witness shall not rise up against any person for any iniquity or for any sin. Regarding any sin that he will sin, by the mouth of 2 witnesses or by the mouth of 3 witnesses shall the matter be confirmed. If a false witness rises up against a man to bear perverted testimony against him, then the 2 men between whom the controversy exists shall stand before Elohim, before the Kohanim and the judges who will be in those days. And the judges shall inquire thoroughly, and behold, the witness is a false witness, he has testified falsely against his brother. Then you shall do to him as he plotted to do to his brother, and you shall thus abolish evil from amongst you. And those who remain shall listen in fear, and they shall no longer continue to commit any such evil thing amongst you. You shall have no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. When you go out to war against your enemies, and you see horse and chariot, and people further numerous than you, you shall not be afraid of them, for Elohim your God is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And it will be when you approach the battle that the Kohen shall come near and speak to the people. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are approaching the battle against your enemies. Let your hearts not be faint, you shall not be afraid, and you shall not be alarmed, and you shall not be terrified because of them. For Elohim your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. And the officer shall speak to the people, saying, What man is there who has built a new house and has not yet inaugurated it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war, and another man inaugurate it. And what man is there who has planted a vineyard and has not yet redeemed it? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war, and another man redeem it. And what man is there who has betrothed a woman and has not yet taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the war, and another man take her. And the officers shall continue to speak to the people, and say, What man is there who is fearful and faint-hearted? Let him go and return to his house, that he should not cause the heart of his brothers to melt as his heart. And it shall be that when the officials finish speaking to the people, they shall appoint officers of the legions at the edges of the people. When you approach a city to wage war against it, you shall propose peace to it. And it will be, if it responds to you with peace, and it opens up to you, then it will be that all the people found therein shall become tributary to you, and they shall serve you. But if it does not make peace with you, and it wages war against you, you shall besiege it. And Elohim your God will deliver it into your hands, and you shall strike all its males with the edge of the sword. However, the women, the children, and the livestock, and all that is in the city, all its spoils you shall take for yourself, and you shall eat the spoils of your enemies, which Elohim your God has given you. Thus you shall do to all the cities that are very distant from you, which are not of the cities of these nations. However, of these people's cities, which Elohim your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall not allow any soul to live. Rather, you shall utterly destroy them, the Hittites and the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as Elohim your God has commanded you, so that they should not teach you to act according to all their abominations that they have done for their deities, whereby you would sin against Elohim your God. When you besiege a city for many days to wage war against it, to capture it, you shall not destroy its trees by wielding an axe against them, for you may eat from them, but you shall not cut them down. Is the tree of the field a man to go into the siege before you? However, a tree you know is not a food tree, you may destroy and cut down, and you shall build bulwarks against the city that makes war with you until its submission. If a slain person be found in the land which Elohim your God is giving you to possess, lying in the field, and it is not known who slew him, then your elders and judges shall go forth, and they shall measure to the cities around the corpse. And it will be that from the city closer to the corpse, the elders of that city shall take a calf with which work has never been done, and that has never drawn a yoke, and the elders of that city shall bring the calf down to a rugged valley, which was neither tilled nor sown, and there in the valley they shall decapitate the calf. And the Kohanim, the sons of Levi, shall approach, for Elohim your God has chosen them to serve Elohim and to bless in the name of Elohim, and by their mouth shall every controversy and every lesion be judged. And all the elders of that city who are the nearest to the corpse shall wash their hands over the calf that was decapitated in the valley. And they shall announce and say, Our hands did not shed this blood, nor did our eyes see this crime. Atone for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, O Elohim, and lay not the guilt of innocent blood amongst your people Israel. And so the blood shall be atoned for them, and you shall abolish the shedding of innocent blood from amongst you, for you shall do what is proper in the eyes of Elohim. Kata Upanishad chapter 2. Yama says, The benevolent is one thing, the pleasant another. Both of these, serving different needs, bind a man. It goes well with him who of the two takes the benevolent, but he who chooses the pleasant misses the end. Both the benevolent and the pleasant present themselves to a man. The calm soul examines them well and discriminates. Yea, he prefers the benevolent to the pleasant, but the fool chooses the pleasant out of greed and avarice. O Nichiketa, after pondering well the pleasures that are or seem to be delightful, you have renounced them all. You have not taken the road abounding in wealth, where many men sink. Wide apart and leading to different ends are these two, ignorance and what is known as knowledge. I regard you, Nachiketa, to be one who desires knowledge, for even many pleasures could not tempt you away. Fools dwelling in darkness, but thinking themselves wise and erudite, go round and round by various tortuous paths, like the blind led by the blind. The hereafter never reveals itself to a person devoid of discrimination, heedless and perplexed by the delusion of wealth. This world alone exists, he thinks, and there is no other. Again and again he comes under my sway. Many there are who do not even hear of Atman, though hearing of Atman many do not comprehend. Wonderful is the expounder, and rare the hearer. Rare indeed is the experiencer of Atman taught by an able preceptor. Atman, when taught by an inferior person, is not easily comprehended, because it is diversely regarded by disputants. But when it is taught by him who has become one with Atman, there can remain no further doubt about it. Atman is subtler than the subtlest, and not to be known through argument. This knowledge cannot be attained by reasoning. Atman becomes easy of comprehension, O dearest, when taught by another. You have attained this knowledge now. You are indeed a man of true resolve. May we always have an inquirer like you. Yama says, I know that the treasure resulting from action is not eternal, for what is eternal cannot be obtained by the non-eternal. Yet I have performed the Nachiketa offering with the help of the non-eternal things, and attained this position which is only comparatively eternal. The fulfillment of desires, the foundation of the universe, the endless rewards of offerings, the shore where there is no fear, that which is adorable and great, the wide abode and the goal, all this you have seen, and being wise, you have with firm resolve discarded everything. The wise man who, by means of a concentration on the self, realizes that ancient effulgent one who is hard to be seen, unmanifest, hidden, and who dwells in the buddhi and rests in the body, he indeed leaves joy and sorrow distantly behind. The living being who has heard this and comprehended it well, who has separated that Aman, the very soul of Dharma, from all physical objects, and has realized the subtle essence, rejoices because he has attained that which is the cause of rejoicing. Nishtaketa says, that which you see as other than righteousness and unrighteousness, other than all this cause and effect, other than what has been and what is to be, tell me that. Yama says, the goal which all the Vedas declare, which all the austerities aim at, and which men desire when they lead the life of continence, I will tell you briefly. It is Om. The syllable Om is indeed Brahma. This syllable is the highest. Whosoever knows this syllable obtains all that he desires. This is the best support. This is the highest support. Whoso knows this support is adored in the world of Brahma. The knowing self is not born. It does not die. It has not sprung from anything. Nothing has sprung from it. Birthless, eternal, everlasting, and ancient, it is not killed when the body is killed. If the killer thinks he kills, and if the killed man thinks he is killed, neither of them apprehends aright. The self kills not, nor is it killed. Atman, smaller than the small, greater than the great, is hidden in the hearts of all living creatures. A man who is free from desires beholds the majesty of the self through tranquility of the senses and the mind, and becomes free from grief. Through sitting still, it travels distantly. Through lying down, it goes everywhere. Who but myself can know that luminous Atman who rejoices and rejoices not? The wise man, having realized Atman as dwelling within impermanent bodies, but itself bodiless, vast and all-pervading, does not grieve. This Atman cannot be attained by the study of the Vedas, or by intelligence, or by much hearing of sacred books. It is attained by him alone whom it chooses. To such a one, Atman reveals its own form. He who has not first turned away from wickedness, who is not tranquil and subdued, and whose mind is not at peace, cannot attain Atman. It is realized only through the knowledge of reality. Who then knows where Atman is? Atman, to whom Brahmins and Kshatriyas are mere food, and death itself a condiment. Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga, numero 12. Arjuna says, those devotees who ever steadfast worship you after this fashion, and those others who worship the imperishable and unmanifest, which of these have greater knowledge of yoga? Sri Krishna says, those who have fixed their minds on me, and who ever steadfast and endowed with supreme faith worship me, them do I hold to be perfect in yoga. And those who have completely controlled their senses, and are of even mind under all conditions, and thus worship the imperishable, the ineffable, the unmanifest, the omnipresent, the incomprehensible, the immutable, the unchanging, the eternal. They, devoted to the well-being of all beings, attain me alone and nothing and none else. The task of those whose minds are set on the unmanifest is further difficult, for the ideal of the unmanifest is hard to attain for those who are embodied. But those who consecrate all their actions to me, regarding me as the supreme goal, and who worship me, meditating on me with single-minded concentration, to them whose minds are thus absorbed in me, verily I become ere long, O Partha, the Savior from the death-fraught ocean of the world. Fix your mind on me, rest your thought on me, and in me alone will you live hereafter. Of this there is no doubt. If you are unable to fix your mind on me, O Dhananjaya, then seek to reach me by the yoga of constant practice. If you are incapable of constant practice, then devote yourself to me service, for even by rendering service to me you will attain perfection. If you are unable to do even this, then be self-controlled. Surrender the fruit of all action and take refuge in me. Knowledge is better than practice, and meditation is better than knowledge. Renunciation of the fruit of action is better than meditation. Peace immediately follows such renunciation. He who never hates any being and is friendly and compassionate to all, who is free from the feelings of I and mine, and even-minded in pain and pleasure, who is forbearing, ever content, and steady in contemplation, who is self-controlled and possessed of firm conviction, and who has consecrated his mind and understanding to me, dear to me is the one who is thus devoted to me. He by whom the world is not afflicted, and whom the world cannot afflict, he who is free from joy and anger, fear and anxiety, he is dear to me. He who is free from dependence, who is pure and prompt, unconcerned and untroubled, and who has renounced all undertakings, dear to me is the man who is thus devoted to me. He who rejoices not and hates not, who grieves not and desires not, who has renounced both benevolent and evil, and is full of devotion, he is dear to me. He who is alike to foe and friend, unaltered in honor and dishonor, who is the same in cold and heat, in pleasure and pain, who is free from attachment, who is unchanged by honor and blame, who is silent, content with whatever he has, homeless, firm of mind, and full of devotion, that man is dear to me. Exceedingly dear to me are they who regard me as the supreme goal, and, endowed with faith and devotion, follow this eternal Dharma. Tao Te Ching 68, 69. 68. The great generals are not warlike. The great warriors do not get angry. Those who are beneficial at defeating enemies do not engage them. Those who are beneficial at managing people lower themselves. It is called the virtue of non-contention. It is called the power of managing people. It is called being harmonious with heaven, the ultimate principle of the ancients. Chapter 69. In utilizing the military, there is a saying, I dare not be the host, but prefer to be the guest. I dare not advance an inch, but prefer to withdraw a foot. This is called marching in formation without formation, raising arms without arms, grappling enemies without enemies, holding weapons without weapons. There is no greater disaster than to underestimate the enemy. Underestimating the enemy almost made me lose my treasures. So when evenly matched armies meet, the side that is compassionate shall win. Menke 28. Menke says, for the mouth to desire sweet taste, the eye to desire beautiful colors, the ear to desire pleasant sounds, the nose to desire fragrant odors, and the forelimbs to desire ease and rest, these things are natural. But there is the appointment of heaven in connection with them, and the superior man does not say of his pursuit of them, it is my nature. The exercise of love between father and son, the observance of righteousness between sovereign and minister, the rules of ceremony between guest and host, the display of knowledge and recognizing the talented, and the fulfilling the heavenly course by the sage. These are the appointment of heaven. But there is an adaptation of our nature for them. The superior man does not say in reference to them, it is the appointment of heaven. Hao Shengbu Hai asks, saying, what sort of man is Yu Zhong? Menko replies, he is a benevolent man, a true man. What do you mean, a benevolent man, a true man? The reply is, a man who commands our liking is what is called a benevolent man. He whose benevolence is part of himself is what is called a true man. He whose benevolence has been filled up in is what is called beautiful man. He whose completed benevolence is brightly displayed is what is called a great man. When this great man exercises a transforming influence, he is what is called a sage. When the sage is beyond our knowledge, he is what is called a spirit man. Yu Zong is between the two first characters and below the last four. Menke says, those who are fleeing from the errors of Mo naturally turn to Yang, and those who are fleeing from the errors of Yang naturally turn to orthodoxy. When they so turn, they should at once and simply be received. Those who nowadays dispute with the followers of Yang and Mo do so as if they were pursuing a stray pig, the leg of which, after they have got it to enter the pen, they proceed to tie. Menke says, there are the exactions of hempen cloth and silk, of grain, and of personal service. The prince requires but one of these at once, deferring the other two. If he require two of them at once, then the people will die of hunger. If he require the three at once, then fathers and sons are separated. Menke says, the precious things of a prince are three, the territory, the people, the government, and its business. If one value as most precious pearls and jade, calamity is sure to befall him. Ping Chongkuo, having obtained an official situation in Qi, Menke says, he is a dead man, that Ping Chongkuo. Ping Chongkuo being put to death, the disciples ask, saying, how did you know, master, that he would meet with death? Menke replies, he was a man who had a little ability, but had not learned the great doctrines of the superior man. He was just qualified to bring death upon himself, but for nothing further. When Menke goes to Tong, he is lodged in the upper palace. A sandal in the process of making had been placed there in a window, and when the keeper of the place came to look for it, he could not find it. On this, someone asks Menke, saying, is it thus that your followers pilfer? Menke replies, do you think that they came here to pilfer the sandal? The man says, I apprehend not, but you, master, having arranged to give lessons, do not go back to inquire into the past, and you do not reject those who come to you. If they come with a mind to learn, you receive them without any further ado. Menke says, all men have some things which they cannot bear. Extend that feeling to what they can bear, and benevolence will be the result. All men have some things which they will not do. Extend that feeling to the things which they do, and righteousness will be the result. If a man can give full development to the feeling which makes him shrink from injuring others, his benevolence will be further than can be called into practice. If he can give full development to the feeling which refuses to break through or jump over a wall, his righteousness will be further than can be called into practice. If he can give full development to the true feeling of dislike with which he receives the salutation, thou, he will act righteously in all places and circumstances. When a scholar speaks what he ought not to speak, by guile of speech seeking to gain some end, and when he does not speak what he ought to speak, by guile of silence seeking to gain some end, both these cases are of a portion with breaking through a neighbor's wall. Menko says, words which are simple, whilst their meaning is distantly reaching, are benevolent words. Principles which, as held, are compendious, whilst their applications is extensive, are benevolent principles. The words of the superior man do not go below the girdle, but great principles are contained in them. The principle which the superior man holds is that of personal cultivation, but the kingdom is thereby tranquilized. The disease of men is this, that they neglect their own fields and go to weed the fields of others, and what they require from others is great, whilst what they lay upon themselves is light. Menko says, Yao and Shun were what they were by nature, Tong and Wu were so by returning to natural virtue. When all the movements in the continents and every turn of the body are exactly what is proper, that shows the extreme degree of the complete virtue. Weeping for the dead should be from true sorrow and not because of the living. The regular path of virtue is to be pursued without any bend and from no view to emolument. The words should all be necessarily sincere, not with any desire to do what is right. The superior man performs the light of right. The superior man performs the law of right, and thereby waits simply for what has been appointed. Menko says, those who give counsel to the great should despise them, and not look at their pomp and display. Hall several times 8 cubits high, with beams projecting several cubits. These, if my wishes were to be actualized, I would not have. Food spread before me over 10 cubits square, and attendants and concubines to the amount of hundreds. These, through my wishes were actualized, I would not have. Pleasure and wine and the dash of hunting, with thousands of chariots following after me. These, though my wishes were actualized, I would not have. What they esteem are what I would have nothing to do with. What I esteem are the rules of the ancients. Why should I stand in awe of them? Menko says, to nourish the mind there is nothing better than to make the desires few. Here is a man whose desires are few. In some things he may not be able to keep his heart, but they will be few. Here is a man whose desires are many. In some things he may be able to keep his heart, but they will be few. Menko says, Zhang Qi was fond of sheep dates, and his son, the philosopher Zhang, could not bear to eat sheep dates. Gong Su Chao asked, saying, which is best, minced meat and broiled meat, or sheep dates? Menko says, minced and broiled meat to be sure. Gong Song Chu goes on. Then why did the philosopher Zhang eat mince and broiled meat and would not eat sheep dates? Menko answers, for mince and broiled meat there is a common liking, whilst that for sheep dates was peculiar. We avoid the name, but do not avoid the surname. The surname is common, the name is peculiar. Wang Zhong asks, saying, Kong Fu Zi, when he was in Cheng, says, let me return, the scholars of my school are ambitious but hasty. They are for advancing and seizing their object, but cannot forget their early ways. Why did Confuzi, when he was in Chen, think of the ambitious scholars of Lu? Menko replies, Confuzi, not getting men pursuing the true medium to whom he might communicate his instructions, determined to take the ardent and the cautiously decided. The ardent would advance to seize their object, the cautiously decided would keep themselves from certain things. It is not to be thought that Confuzi did not wish to get men pursuing the true medium, but being unable to assure himself of finding such, he therefore thought of the next class. I venture to ask what sort of men they were who could be styled the ambitious. Such, replied Menko, as Qing Zhang, Zheng Qi, and Mu Pai were those whom Confuzi styled ambitious. Why were they styled ambitious? The reply is, their aim led them to talk magniloquently, saying, the ancients, but their actions, where we fairly compare them with their words, did not correspond with them. When he found also that he could not get such as were thus ambitious, he wanted to get scholars who would consider anything impure as beneath them. Those were the cautiously decided, a class next to the former. Zhong pursues his questioning. Kung Fu Zi says, there are only your benevolent, careful people of the villages at whom I feel no indignation when they pass my door without entering my house. Your benevolent, careful people of the villages are the thieves of virtue. What sort of people were they who could be styled your benevolent, careful people of the villages? Manko replies, they are those who say, why are they so magniloquent? Their words have not respect to their actions, and their actions have not respect to their words. But they say, the ancients, why do they act so peculiarly and are so cold and distant? Born in this age, we should be of this age. To be benevolent is all that is needed. Eunuch-like, flattering their generation, such are your benevolent, careful men of the villages. Wang Zong says, their whole village styles those men benevolent and careful. In all their conduct they are so. How is it that Confucius considered them to be thieves of virtue? Manko replies, if you would blame them, you would find nothing to allege. If you would criticize them, you would have nothing to criticize. They agree with the current customs. They consent with an impure age. Their principles have a semblance of right-handedness and truth. Their conduct has a semblance of disinterestedness and purity. All men are pleased with them, and they think themselves right, so that it is impossible to proceed with them to the principles of Yao and Shun. On this account, they are called the thieves of virtue. Confucius said, I hate a semblance which is not the actuality. I hate the darnel, lest it be confounded with the corn. I hate glib-tonguedness, lest it be confounded with righteousness. I hate sharpness of tongue, lest it be confounded with sincerity. I hate the music of Chang, lest it be confounded with the true music. I hate the reddish blue, lest it be confounded with vermilion. I hate your benevolent, careful men of the villages, lest they be confounded with the truly virtuous. The superior men seek simply to bring back the unchanging standard, and that being correct, the masses are roused to virtue. When they are so aroused, forthwith perversities and glossed wickedness disappear. Menke says, from Yao and Shun down to Tong were 500 years and further. As to you and Gao Yao, they saw those earliest sages and so knew their doctrines, whilst Tong heard their doctrines as transmitted and so knew them. From Tong to King Wen were 500 years and further. As to Yi Yin and Lai Zi, they saw Tong and knew his doctrines, whilst King Wen heard them as transmitted and so knew them. From King Wang to Confuzi were 500 years and further. As to Tai Gong Wang and San Yi Sheng, they saw Wen and so knew his doctrines, whilst Confuzi heard them as transmitted and so knew them. From Confuzi downwards until now, there are only 100 years and somewhat further. The distance in time from the sage is so distant from being remote, and so very near at hand was the sage's residence. In these circumstances, is there no one to transmit his doctrines? Yea, is there no one to do so? Digha Nikaya, the Atanatiya Sutta, chapter 32. Thus have I heard. At one time the Gracious One was dwelling near Rajagaha on the Vulture's Peak Mountain. Then the four great kings with a great army of Yakas, with a great army of Gandhabas, with a great army of Kumbandas, with a great army of Nagas, having set up a protection over the four quarters, having set serried troops at the four directions, having set up a barricade at the four directions, at the end of the night, having lit up the whole of Vulture's Peak with their surpassing beauty, approached the Gracious One, and after approaching and honoring the Gracious One, they sat down on one side. Then of those Yakas, some, after honoring the Gracious One, sat down on one side, some exchanged greetings with the Gracious One, and after exchanging polite and courteous greetings, sat down on one side. Some, after raising their hands in respectful salutation to the Gracious One, sat down on one side. Some, after announcing their name and family, sat down on one side. Some, whilst keeping silent, sat down on one side. Then, while sitting on one side, the great King Vasavana said this to the Gracious One. There are, Reverend Sir, some high-ranking Yakas who are not pleased with the Gracious One. There are, Reverend Sir, some high-ranking Yakas who are pleased with the Gracious One. There are, Reverend Sir, some middle-ranking yakas who are not pleased with the Gracious One. There are, Reverend Sir, some middle-ranking yakas who are pleased with the Gracious One. There are, Reverend Sir, some low-ranking yakas who are not pleased with the Gracious One. There are, Reverend Sir, some low-ranking yakas who are pleased with the Gracious One. But, Reverend Sir, almost all the yakas are not pleased with the Gracious One. What is the reason for that? Because, Reverend Sir, the Gracious One preaches the Dharma of refraining from killing living creatures, preaches the Dharma of refraining from taking what has not been given, preaches the Dharma of refraining from sexual misconduct, preaches the Dharma of refraining from false speech, preaches the Dharma of refraining from liquor, wines, or intoxicants which cause heedlessness. But, Reverend Sir, almost all of the yakas do not refrain from killing living creatures, do not refrain from taking what has not been given, do not refrain from sexual misconduct, do not refrain from false speech, do not refrain from liquors, wines, or intoxicants which cause heedlessness. To them that is neither dear nor appealing. There are, Reverend Sir, disciples of the Gracious One in the wilderness who are practicing in remote jungle dwelling places, where there is little sound, little noise, which have a lonely atmosphere, lying hidden away from men, which are suitable for seclusion. And there are high-ranking yakas settled there who are not pleased with the word of the Gracious One. To please, then, Reverend Sir, may the Gracious One learn this Atanatiya protection. For the monks, nuns, laymen's, and laywomen's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living, the Gracious One, by keeping silent, gave consent. Then the great king Vasavana, having understood the Gracious One's consent on that occasion, recited this Atanatiya protection. May you revere Vipassana, the glorious visionary. May you revere Sikhi, who has pity on all beings. May you revere Vasabu, the austere one, cleansed of corruptions. May you revere Kakusanda, who has crushed Mara's army. May you revere Konagamana, the accomplished Brahmin. May you revere Kasapa, who is free in every respect. May you revere Angirasa, the glorious son of the Sankhyas, he who preached this Dharma, which is the dispelling of all suffering. Those who are emancipated in the world, who have insight into things as they are, those people free from malicious speech, who are greatly and fully mature, they will revere that Gotama who is of benefit to the angels and men, who has understanding and benevolent conduct, who is great and fully mature. From where the soleil comes up, the son of Aditi, the great circle, whilst that one is coming up, the darkness of the night comes to an end. And after the soleil has come up, it is said to be the daytime. There is a deep lake in that place, an ocean where the waters have flowed. Thus in that place they know there is an ocean where the waters have flowed. From here there is the easterly direction, so the people declare that direction is washed over by a resplendent great king. He is the master of the Gandhabas, the Datarata, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by Gandhabas. He also has a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10, and one Indra by name, ones of great strength, they having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the soleil. From a distance do reverence him who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one. Reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence. The non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly, therefore we should speak like this. We should honor the victor Gautama. We should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. There they say, go the departed who speak maliciously, backbiters, killers of creatures, hunters, thieves, and fraudulent people. From here, that is the southerly direction, so the people declare that direction is watched over by a resplendent king. He is the master of the Kumbandas, Virula, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by Kumbandas. He also has a great army. He also has great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10, and one Indra by name, ones of great strength, they having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the soleil. From a distance do reverence him, who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one. Reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence. The non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly, therefore we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama. We should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. That place where the soleil goes down, the son of Aditi, the great circle, that whilst that one is going down, the light of the day comes to an end, and after the soleil has gone down, it is said to be nighttime. There is a deep lake in that place, an ocean where the waters have flowed. Thus in that place they know there is an ocean where the waters have flowed. From here there is the westerly direction, so the people declare. That direction is watched over by a resplendent great king. He is the master of the Nagas, Virupaka, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by Nagas. He also has a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10, and one Indra by name, ones of great strength, they having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the Soleil. From a distance do reverence him, who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one, reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence, the non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly, therefore we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama, we should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. Where delightful Uttarakuru is, and the benevolent-looking Mount Nehru, the men who are born in that place are unselfish, without possessions. They do not sow the seed, and nor are their plows led along. The rice that men enjoy, the utilization of their matures in untilled ground. Without husk powder or chaff, pure sweet-smelling grains of the finest rice have cooked it on hot rocks without smoke. They then enjoy their food. Having made their cows solid-hoofed, they go about from place to place. Having made their kind solid-hoofed, they go about from place to place. Having made women their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having made men their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having made girls their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having made boys their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having mounted their various carriages, the messengers of that king go around in all directions, being furnished with elephant and horse and sacred carriages. And for that great and resplendent king there are palaces and palanquins, and there are cities for him also that are well built in the heavens, called Atanata, Kusinata, Parikusinata, Natipuria, Parakusitanata. To the north is Kapilvanta, and on the other side is Janoga, Navanavatia, Ambaravatia, and the king's capital named Alakamanda. The great King Kuvera's capital near Dear Sir is named Visana. Therefore is the great king also called Vesavana. These each individually inform the king. Tatola, Tatala, Tatotala, Ojasi, Tejasi, Tatojasi, Shua, Raja, Arita, Nemi. There is a lake in that place also named Dharani, and from there the clouds rain down, from there the rains spread. There also is the public hall named Bagalavati, where the Yakas assemble. There the trees are always in fruit, and have a crowd of birds of diverse kinds, resounding with peacocks and hens, and also with the lovely cuckoos. There is the pheasant who calls out Levon, and the bird who calls out Lift up your minds. There are the jungle fowl and golden cocks, and in the wood the lotus crane. There are the sounds of parrot and myna, and the birds who have young men's faces, and Kuvera's lotus pond is ever attractive all of the time. From here, that is the northerly direction, so the people declare. That direction is watched over by our splendid great king. He is the master of the Yakas, Kuvera, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by the Yakas. He also has a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10 and 1, Indra by name, ones of great strength. They, having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the Soleil, from a distance do reverence him, who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one, reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence, the non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly, therefore we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama, we should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. This, dear sir, is the Atanatiya protection for the monks, nuns, laymen's, and laywomen's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living. Whoever, dear sir, be they monk or nun or layman or laywomen, learns this Atanatiya protection well and will master it in its entirety. Then if a non-human being, be they male yaka or female yaka, or yaka boy or yaka girl, or yaka minister or yaka counselor or yaka messenger, or male Gandhava or female Gandhava, or Gandhava boy or Gandhava girl, or Gandhava minister or Gandhava counselor, or Gandhava messenger, or male Kumbanda or female Kumbanda, or Kumbanda boy or Kumbanda girl, or Kumbanda minister or Kumbanda counselor, or Kumbanda messenger, or male Naga or female Naga, or Naga boy or Naga girl, or Naga minister or Naga counselor, or Naga messenger, with a wicked mind, come near whilst they are going, or stand near whilst they are standing, or sit near whilst they are sitting, or lie near whilst they are lying, then that non-human being, dear sir, would not receive in my villages and towns honor or respect. That non-human being, dear sir, would not receive in my royal city, Alakamanda, ground or dwelling. That non-being, dear sir, would not be able to go to the gathering of the Yakas. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would not give or take him in marriage. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would abuse him with very personal abuse. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would drop any empty bowl over his head. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would split his head into 7 portions. There are non-human beings, dear sir, who are fierce, cruel, and violent. They do not take notice of the great kings. They do not take notice of the great king's men. They do not take notice of the great king's men's men. And those non-human beings, dear sir, are said to be in revolt against the great kings. Just as, dear sir, there are thieves in the king of Magadha's realm, who do not take notice of the king of Magadha, who do not take notice of the king of Magadha's men, who do not take notice of the king of Magadha's men's men. And those great thieves, dear sir, are said to be in revolt against the king of Magadha. Even so, dear sir, there are non-human beings who are fierce, cruel, and violent. They do not take notice of the great kings. They do not take notice of the great king's men. They do not take notice of the great king's men's men. And those non-human beings, dear sir, are said to be in revolt against the great kings. Now, dear sir, whatever non-human beings, be they male yaka or female yaka, or yaka boy, or yaka girl, or yaka minister, or yaka counselor, or yaka messenger, or a male Gandhava, or a female Gandhava, or Gandhava boy, or Gandhava girl, or Gandhava minister, or Gandhava counselor, or Gandhava messenger, or a male Kumbanda, or female Kumbanda, or Kumbanda boy, or Kumbanda girl, or Kumbanda minister, or Kumbanda counselor, or Kumbanda messenger, or a male Naga, or a female Naga, or Naga boy, or Naga girl, or Naga minister, or Naga counselor, or Naga messenger, with a wicked mind should come near a monk, or a nun, or a layman, or a laywoman, whilst they are going, or stand near whilst they are standing, or sit near whilst they are sitting, or lie near whilst they are lying. Then to these yakas, generals, great generals, one should call out, one should shout out, one should cry out, this yaka has seized me, this yaka has grabbed me, this yaka annoys me, this yaka harasses me, this yaka hurts me, this yaka injures me, this yaka will not release me. To which yakas, great yakas, generals, and great generals, great generals, Indra, Soma, and Varuna, Bharadvaja, Pajapati, Kandana, and Yamaseta, Kinugandu, and Nigandu, Panada, and Upamanya, and Matali, the angels' charioteer. The Gandhabas, Chita, and Sena, the kings Nala, and Janasaba, Satagira, Hamavata, Punaka, Karatia, Gula, Sivaka, Muchalinda, Vesamita, Yugandhara, Gopala, and Supageda, Hiri, Neti, and Mandiya. Panchalachanda, Alavaka, Pajuna, Sumana, Sumaka, Dadimuka, Mani, Chara, Dika, together with Sirisaka. Then to these yakas, great yakas, generals, and great generals, one should call out, one should shout out, and one should cry out, this yaka has seized me, this yaka has grabbed me, this yaka annoys me, this yaka harasses me, this yaka hurts me, this yaka injures me, this yaka will not release me. This, dear sir, is the Anataniya, protection for the monks, nuns, laymen's, and laywomen's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living. And now, dear sir, we shall go, as we have many duties, and there is much which ought to be done. Now is the time for whatever you great kings are thinking. Then the four great kings rose from their seats, and after honoring and circumambulating the gracious one, vanished right there. Then some yakas rose from their seats, and after honoring and circumambulating the gracious one, vanished right there. Some exchanged greetings with the gracious one, and after exchanging polite and courteous greetings, vanished right there. Some after raising their hands in respectful salutation to the gracious one, vanished right there. Some after announcing their name and family, vanished right there. And some, whilst keeping silent, vanished right there. Then the gracious one, when that night had passed, addressed the monks, saying, this night, monks, the four great kings, with a great army of yakas, with a great army of Gandhabas, with a great army of Kumbandas, with a great army of Nagas, having set up a protection over the four quarters, having set serried troops at the four directions, having set up a barricade at the four directions, at the end of the night, having lit up the whole of Vulture's Peak with their surpassing beauty, approached me, and after approaching and honoring me, they sat down on one side. Then of those yakas, monks, some after honoring me sat down on one side, some exchanged greetings with me, and after exchanging polite and courteous greetings sat down on one side. Some after raising their hands in respectful salutation to me sat down on one side. Some after announcing their name and family sat down on one side. Some, whilst keeping silent, sat down on one side. Then, while sitting on one side, monks, the great king of Savannah said this to me, there are, reverend sirs, some high-ranking yakas who are not pleased with the gracious one. There are, reverend sirs, some high-ranking yakas who are pleased with the gracious one. There are, reverend sirs, some middle-ranking yakas who are not pleased with the gracious one. There are, reverend sirs, some middle-ranking yakas who are pleased with the gracious one. There are, reverend sirs, some low-ranking yakas who are not pleased with the gracious one. There are, reverend sirs, some low-ranking yakas who are pleased with the gracious one. But, revered sir, almost all the yakas are not pleased with the gracious one. What is the reason for that? Because, reverend sir, the gracious one preaches the Dharma of refraining from killing living creatures, preaches the Dharma of refraining from taking what has not been given, preaches the Dharma of refraining from sexual misconduct, preaches the Dharma of refraining from false speech, preaches the Dharma of refraining from liquor, wines, or intoxicants which cause heedlessness. But, Reverend Sir, almost all of the yakas do not refrain from killing living creatures, do not refrain from taking what has not been given, do not refrain from sexual misconduct, do not refrain from false speech, do not refrain from liquors, wines, or intoxicants which cause heedlessness. To them that is neither dear nor appealing. There are, Reverend Sir, disciples of the Gracious One in the wilderness who are practicing in remote jungle dwelling places where there is little sound, little noise, which have a lonely atmosphere, lying hidden away from men, which are suitable for seclusion. And there are high-ranking yagas settled there who are not pleased with the Gracious One, with the word of the Gracious One. To please, then, Reverend Sir, may the Gracious One learn this Atanatiya protection for the monks, nuns, laymen's, and laywomen's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living. And I, monks, by keeping silent, gave consent. Then the great King Vasavana, monks, having understood my consent on that occasion, recited this Atanatiya protection. May you revere Vipassi, the glorious visionary. May you revere Sikhi, who has pity on all beings. May you revere Visabu, the austere one, cleansed of corruptions. May you revere Kakusanda, who has crushed Mara's army. May you revere Konagamana, the accomplished Brahmin. May you revere Kasapa, who is free in every respect. May you revere Angirasa, the glorious son of the Sankyas, he who preached this Dharma, which is the dispelling of all suffering. Those who are emancipated in the world, who have insight into things as they are, those people who are free from malicious speech, who are great and fully mature, they will revere that Gautama, who is of benefit to angels and men, who has understanding and benevolent conduct, who is great and fully mature. From where the soleil comes up, the son of Aditya, the great circle, whilst that one is coming up, the darkness of night comes to an end. And after the soleil has come up, it is said to be the daytime. There is a deep lake in that place, an ocean where the waters have flowed. Thus in that place they know that there is an ocean where the waters have flowed. From here, that is the easterly direction, so the people declare that direction is washed over by our splendid great king. He is the master of the Gandhabas, Datarata, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by Gandhabas. He also has a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10 and 1, in my name, ones of great strength. They, having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the soleil, from a distance do reverence him, and who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one. Reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence. The non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly. Therefore, we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama. We should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. There they say, go the departed who speak maliciously, backbiters, killers of creatures, hunters, thieves, and fraudulent people. From here, that is the southerly direction, so the people declare. That direction is washed over by our splendid great king. He is the master of the Kumbandas, Virula, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by Kumbandas. He has also a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10 and 1, entered by name, ones of great strength. They, having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the soleil, from a distance do reverence him, who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one. Reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence. The non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly. Therefore, we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama. We should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. The place where the soleil goes down, that is sun Aditya, the great circle, whilst that one is going down, the light of day comes to an end. And after the soleil has gone down, it is said to be nighttime. There is a deep lake in that place, an ocean where the waters have flowed. Thus in that place they know that there is an ocean where the waters have flowed. From here, that is the westerly direction, so the people declare that direction is washed over by our splendid great king. He is the master of the Nagas, Virupaka, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by Nagas. He also has a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10 and 1, entered by name, ones of great strength. They, having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the soleil, from a distance do reverence him, who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one. Reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence. The non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly. Therefore, we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama. We should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. Where delightful Uttarakuru is, and the benevolent-looking Mount Nehru, the men who are born in that place are unselfish, without possessions. They do not sow the seed, and nor are their plows led along the rice, that men enjoy the utilization of their matures in untilled ground. Without husk, powder, or chaff, pure, sweet-smelling grains of the finest rice, have cooked it on hot rocks without smoke. They then enjoy their food. Having made their cows solid-hooved, they go about from place to place. Having made their kind solid-hooved, they go about from place to place. Having made women their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having made men their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having made girls their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having made boys their vehicle, they go about from place to place. Having mounted their various carriages, the messengers of that king go around in all directions, being furnished with elephant and horse and sacred carriages. And for that great and resplendent king there are palaces and palanquins, and there are cities for him also that are well built in the heavens, called Atanata, Kusinata, Parakusinata, Natapuria, Parakusitanata. To the north is Kapivanta, and on the other side is Janoga, Nabanavatia, Ambaravatia, and the king's capital named Alakamanda. The great king Kuvera's capital, dear sir, is named Visana, therefore is the great king also called Vesavana. These each individually inform the king. Tatola, Tatala, Tatotala, Vajasi, Tejasi, Tatojasi, Sura, Raja, Arita, Nemi. There is a lake in that place also named Arani, and from there the clouds rain down, and from there the rain spread. There also is the public hall named Bagalavati, where the yakas assemble. There the trees are always in fruit, and have a crowd of birds of diverse kinds, resounding with peacocks and hens, and also with lovely cuckoos. There is the pheasant who calls out, "Live on," and the bird who calls out, "Lift up your minds." There are the jungle fowl and the golden cocks, and in the wood the lotus crane. There are the sounds of parrot and myna, and birds who have young men's faces, and Kuvera's lotus pond is ever attractive all of the time. That from there is the northerly direction, so the people declare that direction is watched over by a resplendent great king. He is the master of the yakas. Kuvera, such is his name. He delights in song and dance. He is honored by yakas. He also has a great many sons, all of one name, so I have heard. They are 80 and 10 and one, injured by name, ones of great strength. They, having seen the awakened one, the Buddha, kinsman of the Soleil, from a distance, do reverence him, who is great and fully mature. Reverence to you, excellent one. Reverence to you, supreme one. You have looked on us with benevolence. The non-human beings honor you. We have heard this repeatedly. Therefore, we should speak like this. You should honor the victor Gautama. We should honor the victor Gautama, who has understanding and benevolent conduct. We should honor the Buddha Gautama. This, dear sir, is the Atanatiya protection for the monks, nuns, laymen's, and laywomen's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living. Whoever, dear sir, be they monk or nun or layman or laywoman, learns this Anataniya protection well and will master it in its entirety, then if a non-human being, be they male yaka or female yaka, or yaka boy or yaka girl, or yaka minister or yaka counselor or yaka messenger, or male Gandhava or female Gandhava, or Gandhava boy or Gandhava girl, or Gandhava minister or Gandhava counselor, or Gandhava messenger, or male Kumbanda, or female Kumbanda, or Kumbanda boy or Kumbanda girl, or Kumbanda minister or Kumbanda counselor, or Kumbanda messenger, or male Naga or female Naga, or Naga boy or Naga girl, or Naga minister or Naga counselor, or Naga messenger, with a wicked mind should come near whilst they are going, or stand near whilst they are standing, or sit near whilst they are sitting, or lie near whilst they are lying, then that non-human being, dear sir, would not receive in my villages and towns honor or respect. That non-human being, dear sir, would not receive in my royal city Alakamanda, ground or dwelling. That non-human being, dear sir, would not be able to go to the gathering of the yakas. Further, dear sir, that non-human beings would not give or take him in marriage. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would abuse him with very personal abuse. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would drop an empty bowl over his head. Further, dear sir, non-human beings would split his head into 7 portions. There are non-human beings, dear sir, who are fierce, cruel, and violent. They do not take notice of the great kings. They do not take notice of the great king's men. They do not take notice of the great king's men's men. And those non-human beings, dear sir, are said to be in revolt against the great kings. Just as, dear sir, there are thieves in the king of Magadha's realm, who do not take notice of the king of Magadha, who do not take notice of the king of Magadha's men, and who do not take notice of the king of Magadha's men's men. And those great thieves, dear sir, are said to be in revolt against the king of Magadha. Even so, dear sir, there are non-human beings who are fierce, cruel, and violent. They do not take notice of the great kings. They do not take notice of the great king's men. They do not take notice of the great king's men's men. And those non-human beings, dear sir, are said to be in revolt against the great kings. Now, dear sir, whatever non-human beings, be they male yaka or female yaka, or yaka boy or yaka girl, or yaka minister or yaka counselor, or yaka messenger, or a male Gandhava or a female Gandhava, or Gandhava boy or Gandhava girl, or Gandhava minister or Gandhava counselor, or Gandhava messenger, or male Kumbanda or female Kumbanda, or Kumbanda boy or Kumbanda girl, or Kumbanda minister or Kumbanda counselor, or Kumbanda messenger, or male Naga or female Naga, or Naga boy or Naga girl, or Naga minister or Naga counselor, or Naga messenger, with a wicked mind should come near a monk or a nun or a layman or a laywoman whilst they are going, or stand near whilst they are standing, or sit near whilst they are sitting, or lie near whilst they are lying. Then to these yakas, great yakas, generals, great generals, one should call out, one should shout out, one should cry out, this yaka has seized me, this yaka has grabbed me, this yaka annoys me, this yaka harasses me, this yaka hurts me, this yaka injures me, this yaka will not release me. To which yakas, great yakas, generals, and great generals, Inda, Soma, and Varuna, Bharadvaja, Pajapati, Chanda, and Kamaseta, Kinugandu, and Nigandu, Panada, and Upamanya, and Matali, the angels' charioteer. The Gandavas, Chita, and Sena, the kings, Nala, and Janasaba, Satagira, Hemavata, Punaka, Karatiya, Gula, Sevaka, Muchalinda, Vesamita, Yugandhara, Gopala, and Subhageda, Hiri, Neti, Amandiya, Panchalachanda, Alavaka, Pajuna, Sumana, Sumaka, Dadimuka, Mani, Chara, Diga, together with Sirisaka. Then to these yakas, great yakas, generals, and great generals, one should call out, one should shout out, one should cry out. This yaka has seized me, this yaka has grabbed me, this yaka annoys me, this yaka harasses me, this yaka hurts me, this yaka injures me, this yaka will not release me. This, dear sir, is the Atanatiya protection for the monks, nuns, laymen, and lay women's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living. And now, dear sir, we shall go, as we have many duties, and there is much which ought to be done. Now is the time for you, great kings. Now is the time for whatever you great kings are thinking. Then the four great kings, monks, rose from their seats, and after honoring and circumambulating me, vanished right there. Then some yakas, monks, rose from their seats, and after honoring and circumambulating me, vanished right there. Some exchanged greetings with me, and after exchanging polite and courteous greetings, vanished right there. Some after raising their hands in respectful salutation to me, vanished right there. Some after announcing their name and family, vanished right there. And some, whilst keeping silent, vanished right there. Learn the Atanatiya protection, monks. Master the Atanatiya protection, monks. Bear in mind the Atanatiya protection, monks. The Atanatiya protection, monks, is for your well-being and benefit for the monks, nuns, laymen, and lay women's guard, protection, freedom from harm, and comfortable living. The gracious one said this, and those monks were uplifted and greatly rejoiced in what was said by the gracious one. Dhammapada, the Pakinaka Vaga, 21. If by renouncing a lesser happiness one may actualize a greater happiness, let the wise man renounce the lesser, having regard for the greater. Entangled by the bonds of hate, he who seeks his own happiness by inflicting pain on others is never delivered from hatred. The cankers only increase for those who are arrogant and heedless, who leave undone what should be done and do what should not be done. The cankers cease for those mindful and clearly comprehending ones who always earnestly practice mindfulness of the body, who do not resort to what should not be done, and steadfastly pursue what should be done. Having slain more, craving, far, self-conceit, 2 warrior kings, eternalism and nihilism, and destroyed a country, the sense organs and sense objects, together with its treasurer, attachment and lust, ungrieving goes the holy man. Having slain more, craving, far, self-conceit, 2 Brahmin kings, 2 extreme views, and a tiger as the 5th, the 5 mental hindrances. Ungrieving goes the holy man. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Buddha. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Dhamma. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice the recollection of the qualities of the Sangha. Those disciples of the Gautama ever awaken happily, who day and night constantly practice mindfulness of the body. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of non-violence. Those disciples of Gautama ever awaken happily, whose minds by day and night delight in the practice of meditation. Difficult is life as a monk, difficult is it to delight therein. Also difficult and sorrowful is the household life. Suffering comes from association with unequals. Suffering comes from wandering in samsara. Therefore be not an aimless wanderer, be not a pursuer of suffering. He who is full of faith and virtue and possesses benevolent repute and wealth, he is respected everywhere, in whatever land he travels. The benevolent shine from a distance like the Himalaya mountains, but the wicked are unseen like arrows shot in the night. He who sits alone, sleeps alone, and walks alone, who is strenuous and subdues himself alone, will find delight in the solitude of the forest. Gospels, Acts chapter 10 a 12. At Caesarea, there was a man named Cornelius, a centurion in what was known as the Italian regiment. He and all his family were devout and God-fearing, and gave generously to those in need and prayed to God regularly. One day at about 3 in the afternoon he had a vision. He distinctly saw an angel of God who came to him and said, "Cornelius." Cornelius stared at him in fear. "What is it, master?" he asked. The angel answered, "Your prayers and gifts to the poor have come up as a memorial offering before God. Now send men to Joppa to bring back a man named Simon who is called Peter. He is staying with Simon the tanner, whose house is by the sea." When the angel who spoke to him had gone, Cornelius called 2 of his servants and a devout soldier who was one of his attendants. He told them everything that had happened and sent them to Joppa. About noon the following day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the roof to pray. He became hungry and wanted something to eat. Whilst the meal was being prepared, he fell into a trance. He saw heaven opened and something like a large sheet being let down to earth by its 4 corners. It contained all kinds of 4-footed animals as well as reptiles and birds. Then a voice told him, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." "Surely not, master," Peter replied. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." The voice spoke to him a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and immediately the sheet was taken back to heaven. Whilst Peter was wondering about the meaning of the vision, the men sent by Cornelius found out where Simon's house was and stopped at the gate. They called out, asking if Simon, who was known as Peter, was staying there. Whilst Peter was still thinking about the vision, the Spirit said to him, "Simon, 3 men are looking for you. So go up and go downstairs. Do not hesitate to go with them, for I have sent them." Peter went down and said to the men, "I am the one you are looking for. Why have you come?" The men replied, "We have come from Cornelius the centurion. He is a righteous and God-fearing man who is respected by all the Jewish brethren people. A holy angel told him to ask you to come to his house so that he could hear what you have to say." Then Peter invited the men into the house to be his guests. The next day, Peter started out with them, and some of the believers from Joppa went along. The following day, he arrived in Caesarea. Cornelius was expecting them and had called together his relatives and close friends. As Peter entered the house, Cornelius met him and fell at his feet in reverence. But Peter made him get up. "Stand up," he said. "I am only a man myself." Whilst talking with him, Peter went inside and found a large gathering of people. He said to them, "You are well aware that it is against our law for a Jewish brethren to associate with or visit a Gentile, but God has shown me that I should not call anyone impure or unclean. So when I was sent for, I came without raising any objection. May I ask why you sent for me?" Cornelius answered, 3 days ago I was in my house praying at this hour, at 3 in the afternoon. Suddenly a man in shining clothes stood before me and said, "Cornelius, God has heard your prayer and remembered your gifts to the poor. Send to Joppa for Simon, who is called Peter. He is a guest in the home of Simon the tanner, who lives by the sea." So I sent for you immediately, and it was benevolent of you to come. Now we are all here in the presence of God to listen to everything the Master has commanded you to tell us. Then Peter began to speak. "I now understand how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears God and does what is right. You know the message God sent to the people of Israel, announcing the benevolent news of peace through Jesus Christ, who is Master of all. You know what has happened throughout the province of Judea, beginning in Galilee after the baptism that John preached, how God anointed Jesus of Nazareth with the Holy Spirit and power, and how he went around doing benevolence and healing all who were under the power of the devil, because God was with him. We are witnesses of everything he did in the country of the Jewish brethren, and in Jerusalem. They killed him by hanging him on a cross, but God raised him from the dead on the 3rd day and caused him to be seen. He was not seen by all the people, but by witnesses whom God had already chosen, by us who ate and drank with him after he rose from the dead. He commanded us to preach to the people and to testify that he is the one whom God appointed as judge of the living and the dead. All the prophets testify about him, that everyone who believes in him receives forgiveness of sins through his name." Whilst Peter was still speaking these words, the Holy Spirit came on all who heard the message. The circumcised believers who had come with Peter were astonished that the gift of the Holy Spirit had been poured out even on Gentiles, for they heard them speaking in tongues and praising God. Then Peter said, "Surely no one can stand in the way of their being baptized with water. They have received the Holy Spirit just as we have." So we ordered that they be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. Then they asked Peter to stay with them for a few days. The apostles and the believers throughout Judea heard that the Gentiles also had received the word of God. So when Peter went up to Jerusalem, the circumcised believers criticized him and said, "You went into the house of uncircumcised men and ate with them." Starting from the beginning, Peter told them the whole story. "I was in the city of Joppa praying, and in a trance I saw a vision, saw something like a large sheet being let down from from heaven by its four corners, and it came down to where I was. I looked into it and saw four-footed animals of the earth, wild beasts, reptiles, and birds. Then I heard a voice telling me, "Get up, Peter, kill and eat." I replied, "Surely not, Master. Nothing impure or unclean has ever entered my mouth." The voice spoke from heaven a second time, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This happened 3 times, and then it was all pulled up to heaven again. Right then, 3 men who had been sent to me from Caesarea stopped at the house where I was staying. The Spirit told me to have no hesitation about going with them. These 6 brothers also went with me, and we entered the man's house. He told us how he had seen an angel appear in his house and say, "Send to Joppa for Simon, who is called Peter. He will bring you a message through which you and all your household will be saved." As I began to speak, the Holy Spirit came upon them as the Spirit had come upon us at the beginning. Then I remembered what the Master had said, "John baptized with water, but you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit." So if God gave them the same gift God gave us who believed in the Master Jesus Christ, who was I to think that I could stand in God's way? When they heard this, they had no further objections and praised God, saying, "So then, even to Gentiles God has granted repentance that leads to life." Now those who had been scattered by the persecution that broke out when Stephen was killed traveled as distant as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch, spreading the word only amongst Jewish brethren. Some of them, however, men from Cyprus and Cyrene, went to Antioch and began to speak to Greeks also, telling them the benevolent news about the Master Jesus. The Master's hand was with them, and a great number of the people believed and turned to the Master. News of this reached the church in Jerusalem, and they sent Barnabas to Antioch. When he arrived and saw what the grace of God had done, he was glad and encouraged them all to remain true to the Master with all their hearts. He was a benevolent man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a great number of people were brought to the Master. Then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul, and when he found him, he brought him to Antioch. So for a whole year Barnabas and Saul met with the church and taught great numbers of people. The disciples were called Christians first at Antioch. During this time some prophets came down from Jerusalem to Antioch. One of them, named Agabus, stood up and through the Spirit predicted that a severe famine would spread over the entire Roman world. This happened during the reign of Claudius. The disciples, as each one was able, decided to provide help for the brothers and sisters living in Judea. This they did, sending their gift to the elders by Barnabas and Saul. It was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. When he saw that this met with approval amongst the Jewish brethren, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Pesach. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly an angel of the Master appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. "Quick, get up," he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals," and Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me," the angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea what the angel was doing was truly happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Master has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish brethren people were hoping would happen." When this had dawned on him, he went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed she ran back without opening it and exclaimed, "Peter is at the door." "You're out of your mind," they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said it must be his angel. But Peter kept on knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Master had brought him out of prison. "Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this," he said, and then he left for another place. In the meantime, there was no small commotion amongst the soldiers as to what had become of Peter. After Herod had a thorough search made for him and did not find him, he cross-examined the guards in order that they be executed. Then Herod went from Judea to Caesarea and stayed there. He had been quarreling with the people of Tyre and Sidon. They now joined together and sought an audience with him. After securing the support of Blastus, a trusted personal servant of the king, they asked for peace because they depended on the king's country for their food supply. On the appointed day, Herod, wearing his royal robe, sat on his throne and delivered a public address to the people. They shouted, "This is the voice of a deity, not of a man." Immediately, because Herod did not give praise to God, and an angel of the Master struck him down, and he was eaten by worms and died. But the word of God continued to spread and flourish. When Barnabas and Saul had finished their mission, they returned from Jerusalem, taking with them John, also called Mark. Quran, Surah Al-Mursalat, Surah An-Naba, Surah An-Naziyat, 77 y 79. Surah Al-Mursalat. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. By the winds sent forth one after another to man's benefit, which then blow violently in tempestuous gusts, and scatter things distant and wide, then separate them one from another, then spread abroad a message, whether of justification or of warning. Assuredly what you are promised must come to pass. Then when the stars become dim, when the heaven is cleft asunder, when the mountains are scattered to the winds as dust, and when the apostles are all appointed a time to collect, for what day are these portents deferred? For the day of sorting out. And what will explain to thee what is the day of sorting out? Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! Did we not destroy the men of old for their evil? So shall we make later generations follow them. Thus do we deal with men of sin. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! Have we not created you from a fluid held despicable, the which ye placed in a place of rest firmly fixed, for a period of gestation determined according to need? For we determined according to need, for we are the best to determine things. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! Have we not made the earth as a place to draw together the living and the dead, and made therein mountains standing firm, lofty in stature, and provided for you water sweet and wholesome? Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! It will be said, Depart ye to that which ye used to reject as false. Depart ye to a shadow of smoke ascending in 3 columns, which yields no shade of coolness, and is of no utilization against the fierce blaze. Indeed, it throws about sparks huge as forts, as if there were a string of yellow camels marching swiftly. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! That will be a day when they shall not be able to speak, nor will it be open to them to put forth pleas. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! That will be a day of sorting out. We shall gather you together and those before you. Now if ye have a trick or plot, utilize it against me. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! As to the righteous, they shall be amidst cool shades and springs of water, and they shall have fruits all they desire. Eat ye and drink ye to your heart's content, for that ye worked righteousness. Thus do we certainly reward the doers of benevolence. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! O ye unjust, eat ye and enjoy yourselves but a little while, for that ye are sinners. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! And when it is said to them, Prostrate yourselves, they do not. Ah, woe that day to the rejectors of truth! Then what message after that will they believe in? Surah An-Naba. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. Concerning what are they disputing? Concerning the great news, about which they cannot agree. Verily they shall soon come to know. Verily, verily they shall soon come to know. Have we not made the earth as a wide expanse, and the mountains as pegs? And have we not created you in pairs, and made you sleep for rest, and made the night as a covering, and made the day as a means of subsistence? And have we not built over you the 7 firmaments, and placed therein a light of splendor? And did we not send down from the clouds water in abundance, that we may produce therewith corn and vegetables, and gardens of luxurious growth? Verily the day of sorting out is a thing appointed, the day that the trumpet shall be sounded, and ye shall come forth in crowds. And the heavens shall be opened as if there were doors, and the mountains shall vanish as if there were a mirage. Truly hell is a place of ambush for the transgressors, a place of destination. They will dwell therein for ages. Nothing cool shall they taste therein, nor any drink, save a boiling fluid, and a fluid dark, murky, intensely cold. A fitting recompense for them, for that they used not to fear any account for their deeds, but they impudently treated our signs as false, and all things have we preserved on record. So taste ye the fruits of your deeds, for no increase shall we grant you except in punishment. Verily for the righteous there will be a fulfillment of the heart's desires. Gardens enclosed and grapevines, companions of equal age, and a cup full to the brim. No vanity shall they hear therein, nor untruth. Recompense from thy Lord, a gift amply sufficient, from the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and all between. Allah most gracious, none shall have power to argue with Allah. The day that the Spirit and the angels will stand forth in ranks, none shall speak except any who is permitted by Allah most gracious, and Allah will say what is right. That day will be the sure reality. Therefore, whoso will, let him take a straight return to his Lord. Verily, we have warned you of a penalty near, the day when men will see the deeds which his hands have sent forth. Man will see the deeds which his hands have sent forth, and the unbeliever will say, Woe unto me, would that I were mere dust. Surah An-Naziyat. Bismillah ar-Rahmani ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful. By the angels who tear out the souls of the wicked with violence, by those who gently draw out the souls of the blessed, and by those who glide along on errands of mercy, then press forward as in a race, then arrange to do the commands of their Lord. One day everything that can be in commotion will be in violent commotion, followed by oft-repeated commotions. Hearts that day will be in agitation. Cast down will be their owners' eyes. They say now, what shall we indeed be? Returned to our former state? What when we shall have become rotten bones? They say, it would in that case be a return with loss, but verily it will be but a single compelling cry, when behold they will be in the full awakening to judgment. As the story of Moshe reached thee, behold thy Lord did call to him in the sacred valley of Tuwa. Go thou to Pharaoh, for he has indeed transgressed all bounds, and say to him, wouldst that thou shouldst be purified from sin, and that I guide thee to thy Lord, so thou shouldst fear Allah. Then did Moshe show him the great sign, but Pharaoh rejected it and disobeyed guidance. Further he turned his back, striving hard against Allah. Then he collected his men and made a proclamation, saying, I am your master most high. But Allah did punish him and made an example of him in the hereafter as in this life. Verily, this is an instructive warning for whosoever feareth Allah. What, are ye the further difficult to create, or the heaven above? Allah hath constructed it. On high hath Allah raised its canopy, and Allah hath given it order and perfection. Its night doth Allah endow with darkness, and its splendor doth Allah bring out with light. And the earth further hath Allah extended to a wide expanse. Allah draweth out therefrom its moisture and its pasture, and the mountains hath Allah firmly fixed, for utilization and convenience to you and your cattle. Therefore, when there comes the great overwhelming event, the day when men shall remember all that he strove for, the day when man shall remember all that he strove for, and hellfire shall be placed in full view for all to see, then for such as had transgressed all bounds and had preferred the life of this world, the abode will be hellfire. And for such as had entertained the fear of standing before their Lord's tribunal and had restrained their soul from lower desires, their abode will be the garden. They ask thee about the hour, when will be its appointed time? Wherein art thou concerned with the declaration thereof? With thy Lord in the limit is the limit fixed therefore. Thou art but a warner for such as fear it. The day they see it, it will be as if they had tarried but a single evening, or at most to the following matin. Tanakh, Yehoshua, chapter 7 a 9. And the children of Israel committed a trespass in the consecrated thing, for Achan the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Yehuda, took of the consecrated thing, and the anger of Elohim was kindled against the children of Israel. And Yehoshua sent men of Yericho to Ai, which is beside Bet Aven, on the east side of Bethel, and spoke to them, saying, Go up and spy out the land. And the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned to Yehoshua and said to him, do not let all the people go up, but let about 2,000 or 3,000 men go up and smite Ai. Do not trouble all the people there, for they are but few. So there went up there all of the people, about 3,000 men, and they fled before the men of Ai. And the men of Ai smote of them about 36 men, and they chased them from before the gate to Shebarim, and smote them in the descent. And the hearts of the people melted and became as water. And Yehoshua rent his clothing and fell to the earth upon his face before the ark of Elohim until the evening, he and the elders of Israel, and they put dust upon their heads. And Yehoshua said, woe, O Elohim God, why have you at all brought this people over the Jordan to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to cause us to perish? Would that we had been content and dwelt on the other side of the Jordan. Pray, O Lord, O Elohim, what shall I say after Israel has turned their backs before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land shall hear and shall encircle us and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do for your great name? And Elohim said, Yehoshua, get up, why do you fall upon your face? Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant which I commanded them, and they have also taken of the consecrated thing, and have also stolen, and also dissembled, and they have also put into their vessels. And the children of Israel shall not be able to stand before their enemies, they will turn their backs before their enemies, because they have become accursed. I will not be with you any further, if you do not destroy the consecrated thing from amongst you. Arise, prepare the people, and say, prepare yourselves for mañana, for thus says Elohim, God of Israel, there is an accursed thing in your midst, O Israel. You will not be able to stand before your enemies until you remove the accursed thing from amongst you. In the meantime, therefore, you shall be brought near according to your tribes, and it shall be that the tribe which Elohim takes shall come near by families, and the family by which Elohim takes shall come near by households, and the household which Elohim takes shall come near by man by man. And it shall be, he that is taken with the accursed thing shall be burned with fire, he and all that he has, because he has transgressed the covenant of Elohim, because he has wrought an infamous deed in Israel. And Yehoshua rose up early in the matin and brought Israel near by their tribes, and the tribe of Yehudah was taken. And he brought near the family of Yehudah, and he took the family of the Zarites, and he brought the family of the Zarites near man by man, and Zabdi was taken. And he brought his household near man by man, and Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, of the tribe of Yehudah, was taken. And Yehoshua said to Achan, my son, give, I pray you, glory to the Elohim, God of Israel, and make confession to Elohim, and tell me now what you have done. Do not hide anything from me. And Achan answered Yehoshua and said, indeed, I have sinned against Elohim, God of Israel, and thus have I done. When I saw amongst the spoils a benevolent Babylonish garment, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold, of 50 shekels weight. Then I coveted them, and I took them, and behold, they are hidden in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. And Yehoshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and behold, it was hidden in the tent, and the silver under it. And they took them from the midst of the tent, and brought them to Yehoshua and to all the children of Israel, and laid them out before Elohim. And Yehoshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, and the silver, and the garment, and the wedge of gold, and his sons, and his daughters, and his ox, and his ass, and his flock, and his tent, and all that he had. And they brought them up to the valley of Achor. And Yehoshua said, why have you troubled us? Elohim shall trouble you this day. And all Israel stoned him with stones, and burned them with fire, after they had stoned them with stones. And they raised over him a great heap of stones to this day, so that Elohim turned from the fierceness of Elohim's anger. Therefore the name of that place was called the valley of Achor to this day. And Elohim said to Yehoshua, fear not, and be not dismayed. Take all the people of war with you, and arise, go up to Ai. See, I have given into your hand the king. I have given into your hand the king of Ai, and his people, and his city, and his land. And you shall do to Ai and its king as you did to Jericho and its king, and only its spoil and its cattle you shall take as spoils to yourselves. Set yourself ambush for the city behind it. And Yehoshua arose, and all the people of war, to go up against Ai. And Yehoshua chose 30,000 men, mighty men of valor, and sent them away by night. And he commanded them, saying, behold, you shall lie in ambush against the city behind the city. Do not go very distant from the city, and all of you be ready. And I and all the people that are with me will draw near to the city. And it shall be, when they come out against us, as at first, that we will flee before them. And they will come out after us until we have drawn them out from the city. For they will say, they flee before us as at first, and we will flee before them. And you shall rise up from the ambush and drive out those remaining in the city, and Elohim your God will deliver into your hand deliver it into your hand. And it shall be when you have seized the city that you shall set the city on fire, according to the word of Elohim shall you do. See, I have commanded you. And Yehoshua sent them, and they went to the place of ambush, and stayed there between Bethel and Ai, on the west side of Ai. And Yehoshua lodged that night amongst the people. And Yehoshua rose up early in the matin and counted the people, and he and the elders of Israel went up before the people to Ai. And all the people of war that were with him went up and drew near and came before the city and camped on the north side of Ai, and the valley was between him and Ai. And he took about 5,000 men and set them to lie in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of Ai. And the people set all the host that was on the north of the city and their liers in wait on the west of the city, and Yehoshua went that night into the midst of the valley. And it was when the city of Ai saw, they hastened and rose up early, and the men of the city went out against Israel to battle, he and all his people, at a time appointed before the plain, but he did not know that there was an ambush against him behind the city. And Yehoshua and all Israel pretended to be beaten before them, and fled by way of the desert. And all of the people that were in Ai were called together to pursue them, and they pursued Yehoshua, and were drawn away from the city. And there was not a man left in Ai or Bethel that did not go out after Israel, and they left the city open and pursued Israel. And Elohim said to Yehoshua, stretch out the spear that is in your hand toward Ai, for I will give it into your hand. And Yehoshua stretched out the spear that was in his hand towards the city. And the ambush arose quickly out of their place, and they ran as soon as he had stretched out his hand. And they entered into the city and took it, and hastened and set the city on fire. And the men of Ai looked behind them and saw, and behold, the smoke of the city ascended up to heaven, and they had no power to flee this way or that way. And the people that fled to the city turned back upon the pursuers. And Yehoshua and all Israel saw that the ambush had taken the city, and that the smoke of the city ascended. Then they turned back and slew the men of Ai. And the others came out of the city against them, so that they were in the midst of Israel, some on this side and some on that side. And they smote them, so that they let none of them remain or escape. And the king of Ai they seized alive, and brought him to Yehoshua. And it was when Israel made an end of slaying all the inhabitants of Ai in the field, in the desert, where they chased them, and when they had all fallen by the edge of the sword until they were consumed, that all the Israelites returned to Ai and smote it with the edge of the sword. And so it was that all that fell that day, both of men and women, were 12,000, all the people of Ai. And Yehoshua did not draw back his hand that he had stretched out with the spear, until he had completely destroyed all the inhabitants of Ai. Only the cattle and the spoils of that city Israel took for a prey to themselves, according to the word of Elohim, which Elohim had commanded Yehoshua. And Yehoshua burnt Ai and made it a heap forever, a desolation to this day. And the king of Ai he hanged on a gallows until evening. And as the Soleil said, Yehoshua commanded, and they took his carcass down from the gallows, and they threw it at the entrance of the gate of the city, and raised upon it a great heap of stones to this day. Then Yehoshua built an altar to Elohim, God of Israel, on Mount Ebal, as Moshe, the servant of Elohim, commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moshe, an altar of whole stones, upon which no man has lifted up an iron. And they offered up burnt offerings to Elohim, and sacrificed peace offerings. And he wrote there upon the stones a copy of the law of Moshe, and he wrote in the presence of the children of Israel. And all Israel and their elders and officers and their judges stood on this side of the ark and on that side, before the priests and the Levites, the bearers of the ark of the covenant of Elohim, the stranger as well as the native born, half of them over against Mount Gerizim, and half of them over against Mount Ebal, as Moshe the servant of Elohim had commanded, to bless the people of Israel first. And afterward he read all the words of the law, the blessing and the curse, according to all that is written in the book of the Torah. There was not a word of all that Moshe commanded which Yehoshua did not read before all the congregation of Israel, with the women and the little ones and the strangers that walked amongst them. And it was when all the kings that were on this side of the Jordan, in the hill country and in the valley, and on all of the shore of the great sea opposite Lebanon, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite heard of this, that they gathered together to war with Yehoshua and with Israel with a single accord. And the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Yehoshua had done to Jericho and to Ai. And they also acted with wile, and they went and disguised as ambassadors, and they took worn sacks for their donkeys, and wine bottles rotten, split, and tied together, and worn patched footwear on their feet, and worn garments upon them, and all the bread of their provisions was dry and moldy. And they went to Yehoshua to the camp at Gilgal, and said to him and to the men of Israel, We have come from a distant land, and now make a covenant with us. And each of the men of Israel said to the Hivites, Perhaps you will dwell in my midst, and how can I make a covenant with you? And they said to Yehoshua, We are your servants. And Yehoshua said to them, Who are you, and from where do you come? And they said to him, From a very distant land have your servants come, because of the name of Elohim your God, for we have heard of Elohim's fame, and all that Elohim did in Egypt, and all that Elohim did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of the Jordan, to Sihon king of Heshbon, and to Og king of Bashan, who was in Ashtaroth. And our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spoke to us, saying, Take provision in your hand for the journey, and go towards them, and say to them, We are your servants, and now make a covenant with us. This our bread we took hot for our provision out of our houses on the day that we set out to go to you, but now, behold, it is dry and has become moldy. And these wineskins which we filled were new, and behold, they are split. And these are our garments, and our shoes are worn because of the very long journey. And the men took their provisions, and did not ask counsel of the mouth of Elohim. And Yehoshua made peace with them, and made a covenant with them, and let them live. And the princes of the congregation swore to them. And it was at the end of 3 days, after they had made a covenant with them, that they heard that they were their neighbors, and that they dwelt amongst them. And the children of Israel journeyed, and came to their cities on the 3rd day. And their cities were Gibeon, and Chephirah, and Beerot, and Kiriath Yeraim. And the children of Israel did not smite them, because the princes of the congregation had sworn to them by the Elohim, the God of Israel. And all the congregation complained against the princes. And all the princes said to all the congregation, We have sworn to them by Elohim, the God of Israel. Now therefore we may not touch them. This we will do to them, and let them live, and there will be no wrath upon us, because of the oath which we swore to them. And the princes said to them, Let them live. So they became hewers of wood and drawers of water to all the congregation, as the princes had spoken to them. And Yehoshua called for them, and he spoke to them, saying, Why have you deceived us, saying, We are very distant from you, when you dwell amongst us? And now you are cursed, and there shall never fail to be slaves from you, and hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. And they answered Yehoshua and said, Because it was certainly told to your servants how Elohim your God commanded Elohim's servant Moshe to give you all the land, and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land from before you. And we were very afraid for our lives because of you, and have done this thing. And now, behold, we are in your hand, as it seems benevolent and right to you to do to us, do. And he did so to them, and he delivered them from the hand of the children of Israel, and they did not slay them. And Yehoshua made them that day hewers of wood and drawers of water for the congregation, and for the altar of Elohim, to this day in the place which Elohim would choose. Alhamdulillah, Ar-Rahmani Ar-Rahim, Allah Wabha. 道可道非成道，名可名非成名。Já Rastafari. Deus nos daqui essencial de Santa Fakita no Matum, Vaheguru Salam. Baruch Ata Elohim, Elohim Melech Halam, Asher Kasanu Bamitzutav Tzivan la Supervisor. Amen. Baruch Ata Elohim, Elohim Melech Halam, Barei Puriagafen. Amen. Kyrie eleison, Sivamastu Sabjikatehi, Sabe Sata Bavantu Sukitata. Vagabium, Aquaba, Upenda Namani, Fakiri Nisanami, Chinta Damperame, Labor of me, woman chica, Ubuntu Shabana, Fakithkum. Session, Kamosinina, Domo Argato, Pelama Yellow, Wakatako, Toko Lokoshingu, Gomelagan. God, we thank you for all your blessings. Ata Jamia Yatafanami. Mado, the home, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. Namaste, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom. Zaijian, adios, Che Chakaris, Simpin Asmur, Wakilak Fred. My love and peace. Respect and honor to His Majesty Has Selassie, respect and honor to Her Majesty Wise Aramanan, respect and honor to all our ancestors, all our prophets, all our sages, past and present, known and unknown. All thanks and praise to the Most High Elohim. Blessed love and peace.